What's going on, you guys? It's your boy, the fifth derivative here. And I want to talk about, the future of the Mortal Kombat franchise. But before I get into the future, I need to talk about the present day video you're looking at. So, of course, you may not recognize this costume of Raiden, and that's because it doesn't exist. It's a mod by a creator by the name of Shar, S-H-A-A-R. And if you visit his YouTube page, he has a bunch of his mods on that page, and this is the classic Mortal Kombat 2 Raiden mod that he did. Pretty easy to install. And if you go to nexusmods.com, he actually has a bunch of mods on there. So, you can feast your eyes on that, and hopefully you enjoy looking at the mods as much as I did. And I hope you enjoy the gameplay. So, yeah. So, I'm making this video because I've made several videos out now talking about my hopes for the upcoming Mortal Kombat 12. And, I stand by everything that I said in those videos. But I can't just focus strictly on Mortal Kombat 12. It dawns on me that I need to look towards the future. And the reason I say that is because, those of us that have played Mortal Kombat for a long time, since the beginning, we know that ever since the Midway days, Mortal Kombat has been a franchise that has been ever evolving. And it's good to evolve. Evolution is not only beneficial, but sometimes it's absolutely necessary. But when you have too much rapid evolution all at once, particularly as it pertains to a competitive fighting game, it creates unnecessary discord. It creates rifts in the communities that are created from the fighting game itself that don't need to exist. And I want to talk about, the Mortal Kombat community a little bit. Of course, the competitive NRS scene began with Mortal Kombat 9. And people can say whatever they want to say about Mortal Kombat 9. But the fact is, that game had a meta that I would say that most people considered to be fun. I don't think it's controversial to say that. Most people in the MK community still regard MK9 as, if not outright their favorite MK, one of their favorite Mortal Kombats of all time. However, the game that followed Mortal Kombat 9, the Mortal Kombat game that followed Mortal Kombat 9, was MKX. And you can say whatever you want about MKX, but what is undisputable is Mortal Kombat X did not resemble Mortal Kombat 9 in any significant way in terms of its meta. It plays nothing like MK9. Now, it has some things in common, such as the meter system, the X-ray system, much of the roster, the fatalities, gore, and all that stuff. All the things that are typically associated with Mortal Kombat. But in terms of the competitive gameplay, there's no similarities whatsoever. And then fast forward to the current Mortal Kombat 11, you can say what you want about Mortal Kombat 11, but it does not resemble Mortal Kombat X in terms of its meta, its gameplay. And though this has been typically a strength for Midway Studios making Mortal Kombats, I would contend that it absolutely is not an asset for NRS Studios. I would contend that this ever-shifting meta of Mortal Kombat has done little more than splinter the community into factions. You know, when you go on Twitter, or you go on Reddit, or you go on YouTube, or any other, you know, websites that allow people to talk about Mortal Kombat, you hear all kind of disparate opinions as to how they feel, how individuals feel Mortal Kombat should play. Some people want the run button. Some people don't want the run button. Some people want breakers. Some people, well, nobody wants breakaway. I think that's probably one thing that's universally agreed upon. Some people want their women to be scantily clad. Other people do not. There's just not much agreement. And I'm not going to blame the community for that. I'm going to blame NRS. You could never best a god. The games are too different from each other, is the point that I'm making. Each consecutive Mortal Kombat game is similar to its predecessor in name only. In terms of gameplay, there's very seldom any kind of similarities. I mean, there's obviously some of the most basic similarities, but you know, if you play a character in all three games, chances are that character will not have the same archetype and will not play alike in any of the three games. I'm a Sub-Zero player. The Sub-Zero from MK9 is not the Sub-Zero from MKX. And neither of those two Sub-Zeros is the Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat 11. And I contend that there isn't a fighting game out there that has this kind of variability amongst its mainstay members of the cast. And it's about high time that that change. And only NRS can change this. So then the question is, what can be done? What could NRS possibly do to try to thread the needles of these three games together? Well, I don't claim or proclaim to know all the answers, but I can at least propose something. I think I can at least sort of try to give an initial blueprint as to what NRS could possibly do, and so that's what this video is about. Talking about a possible path forward for Mortal Kombat, because I fully expect that Mortal Kombat 12, no matter what we hear when that game is announced and what gameplay we see, it's probably going to be completely different than MK11. Possibly similar to MKX, but almost definitely going to not play like any of the previous three Mortal Kombats. And I think that's a troubling trend that is only going to lead to the splintering of the community even further. So we need to stop it. Okay. So how do we fix this? How does NRS fix this? One thing I think that NRS can do is, ironically enough, it can look to its past. So If you go back to the 3D era of Mortal Kombat, every character had 3 distinct fighting styles. Each character had 2 martial art stances and then a weapon stance. And the characters could switch between those stances on the fly, you know, adapting to the opponent or switching between the stances to do a style branching combo that did a whole bunch of damage. Page 62. And so me and my boy Wallace were talking, and he postulated that perhaps NRS could utilize this same approach going forward. And so what he suggested was this. He said that a future Mortal Kombat should still be 2D. Obviously, I don't think Mortal Kombat should ever go back to being 3D again. But a future Mortal Kombat should consist of each character having 2 stances. 2 stances. Each stance should have its own normals, its own strings, its own special moves that can only be performed while in that stance. Possibly even its own fatal blows / X-rays, if possible. Its own crushing blows. Each character should essentially be 2 characters rolled up into one. And when I first heard this, I said, do tell, my dear Wallace. I didn't use that language, but I'm just saying. But as I thought about it more, I think it's perfect. It's perfect. That's exactly something that should be done. Because by having 2 distinct stances, 2 sets of normals gives NRS the chance to pack a lot of depth for each character. It gives NRS a chance to give characters all the special moves in every version of Mortal Kombat that has ever existed. Well, at least most of them. You know, obviously you can't get all the special moves because this game is 30 years old. This franchise is 30 years old. And certain characters, such as Sub-Zero, literally have 30 years of MK history and 30 years of iconic moves to potentially include, and all of them ain't gonna make it. We understand that. But some of his most beloved and useful and iconic moves could literally be in all, or in both of those stances. And the same is true for every character, not just Sub, you know? So, let's consider an example. Johnny Cage is on screen right now, so let's talk about him. A possible way for Johnny Cage to be in a game like this would be for one of Johnny Cage's stances to be similar to how he plays in MK11. See, in Mortal Kombat 11, Johnny Cage is a footsie character. His job is to stand at, you know, roughly match start distance, weaving in and out of the opponent's footsie range, where he clips them with long-range, high attacks. He doesn't really have any up-close mids because he's not really designed to be played up close like that. He's not Jackie Briggs. He's not Jax. He's not, you know, a true rushdown character. Not how he was in MK9. I'll get to that in a minute. So, one of his stances could have a bunch of normals that all follow how he would play if he were a mid-range character. So he would have slower normals that have lots of range, slow pokes that have lots of range. You know, he might have his arcing force balls that he got in Mortal Kombat 2 that are designed to hit airborne opponents and ducking opponents and stuff like that, but will miss against opponents standing in certain parts of the screen, the mid-range part of the screen where he dominates. You know what I'm saying? He would be sort of designed like that in one stance. But then in his other stance, now you can design that stance to more resemble the Johnny Cage from MK9, where he would, you know, he would be very stubby. You know, his furthest ranging normals would probably get sweep distance or slightly closer. He could have his 10-frame dizzy knee or 9-frame dizzy knee from Mortal Kombat 9. You know what I'm saying? He could have his plus frames, his fast pokes. You know, he can be the oppressive up-close character that he was in previous games. But these normals would all sort of emphasize his nature as a rushdown character. And they would thus be trash at mid-screen, where the other stance would shine, and be utterly useless at full screen. And his normals, his strings, and special moves can all reflect this. You know, in contrast with the other Johnny Cage, he could have the straight force balls that are plus when you meter burn them. You know what I'm saying? He could have a different set of pokes that are very, very stubby in range, but they're really fast and really plus, so that you have to respect what he does. You know, things like that. And of course, he could have different versions of his moves, because he's had the flip kick, and he's also had the rising elbow. In one of the stances, he could have flip kick. The other one, he could have rising elbow. If they wanted to keep the camera and nut punch dynamic, where he has two combo starting moves that you know, that sort of occupy the same role but have different utility, he could have one of each in the various stances. You know what I'm saying? Like, it could work out very well for him. This, you know, two-stance dichotomy for each character could be very, very, very beneficial. It would be fresh, but familiar. You know what I'm saying? Because it's just like the style branch, I was gonna say style branching combos, but it'd be very similar to the 3D MK era, but it would be refreshed and modernized. You know, it would also make the characters more well-rounded, because this version of Johnny Cage on screen right now, he has to beat you in neutral, and there are many characters that compete with him in that range that he likes to play at. So against those characters, he struggles. He wouldn't have to struggle so hard anymore in some of his matches if he could play up close and at mid-range. He would still lose to zoners, or at least have a tough time against them, but once he gets in on them, he could give them a lot of problems. You know what I'm saying? And of course, each of these stances would be predicated with their own launching strings, potentially launching normals. That way he wouldn't have to be tethered to meter, in order to do combos. You know what I'm saying? I would honestly envision sort of a combo system like Mortal Kombat 9 where characters got lots of damage meterlessly and with meter, even more with meter. I would love something like that without having to rely on excessive 50-50s. That was just one example. So you have different stances for a character, and those different stances could be focused on range. But then other characters could have different stances that are focused on weapons, where one is a hand-to-hand style, and the other style is weapons-based. And most likely they would exchange range and damage for safety and speed. You know what I'm saying? You know. And then some characters could have differing stances in which, you know, the two stances represent a transformation. Damn, that was a fly-ass combo. Sheesh! I was very impressed when he hit that on me. You know, so, you know, certain characters like let's say Scorpion, and we're just spitballing here, but imagine if Scorpion had, you know, a Hanzo stance where he's the Scorpion we know and love and stuff like that. But then his other stance was like a Hellfire stance where he's, you know, on fire, and, you know, just by him being in this stance, he does, you know, unblockable chip damage to opponents because he's on fire the whole damn time. You know. And then he's more unhinged and more unsafe, but he does more damage. You know what I'm saying? Like, stuff like that. A transformation stance like that could be really, really cool. This would be really good for characters like Ferrator, where maybe one stance is Tor by himself, and then the other stance is the both of them tag teaming. You know, they get extended normals. You know, they get to throw Farah as the projectile. You know, they get to have some of those classic MKX moves that people grew to know and love for a single game. But then in the other stance, he's a grappler that doesn't have the range that he used to have with Farah. You know what I'm saying? Like, a system like that would be really, really cool. And the key of it is you'd be able to switch between these stances on the fly whenever you wanted in the match. You know. So you wouldn't be stuck with one play style. You wouldn't be stuck with your singular set of normals that may or may not be effective against your opponent. You'd be able to switch on the fly, adapting to your opponent. Of course, you know, this means that a lot of characters could get their special moves back. You know, classic moves that have never seen the light of day in more than a couple games could make a return. So for in the instance of Sub-Zero, maybe one of Sub-Zero's stances has Ice Clone and Slide, right? But then the other stance has the Ice Parry, or maybe the 3D Ice Shaker move that he had in MK Deadly Alliance, and then it has Cold Shoulder instead of Slide. You know what I'm saying? So instead of doing clones, he would do Ice Shaker instead, or maybe he'd do the parry from MKX. And you could tie many of these moves to the same input. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would keep cold shoulder and slide as the same input, but they would have completely different frame data. They would have completely different properties. You know what I'm saying? Cold shoulder could be a combo ender that is safe on block when meter burned or something like that. And it doesn't have the range or the speed of the slide, but it's a move that's potentially safe for Sub-Zero to do. Whereas the slide is the same slide that we know and love. Really, really fast startup, low profiles, you know, all that kind of stuff. But, you know, it's death on block. You know what I'm saying? Point is, there's all kinds of different possibilities for the characters that are on there. You know, any character in this Mortal Kombat where a system like this is, you know, in place, those characters could potentially be the best versions of themselves that we've ever seen, because they have all of their tools to play with, and it's up to the player to decide how they want to use them, which tools are useful, and when are they useful. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, such a system is heavily reliant on NRS. You know, they would really have to map out, you know, how each character is going to play, what kind of range each character is going to play in, what kind of strengths and what kind of weaknesses they're going to have, and make sure that the weaknesses that they're supposed to have on paper actually match up with the real weaknesses they have in matches. And they would have to support their game and act quickly if things don't match. I mean, even the way that they potentially change characters would be different, because perhaps, you know, a move is too strong, not because of its own properties, but because of the stance that it's in. And so maybe a potential nerf for certain characters would be to switch the stance that a particular special move appears in. You know what I'm saying? That way that particular stance is not overpowering. You know? It's just a thought. I think it's a brilliant idea. You know, I'm really upset that I didn't come up with it myself, but hey, you know, we don't have a monopoly on good ideas. I think this would be a brilliant one. So then I thought, okay, well, what do we do about this meter system that we have here? Because we have now 2 different meter systems in our Mortal Kombat franchise, and both of them have their merits and their drawbacks. You know, MK11's meter system was good because it was fair. Everyone had the same meter. Everyone built meter at exactly the same rate because it just recharged on its own. But the drawback was there's no such thing as meter management because it was managed for you. You know, players were not in control of how much meter they built, and you know, that takes an important aspect of the game away. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people were clamoring to go back to the old meter system. The strengths of the old meter system were, of course, you have more bars of meter to play with. You have more autonomy over what you do with your meter. You could use it for combos, or you could save it all up and use it for an X-ray and something like that. But the problem with that system was there were too many things tied to meter. Like, you didn't see X-rays unless somebody had 3 bars of meter. which made them virtually unseen, and a lot of them weren't very useful because you could do a combo that did 10 to 20% more damage than a damn X-ray with 1 bar. So why would you spend 3? There was seldom a good reason to do that. Not to mention, different characters built meter at different rates. Characters that were hardcore zoners or you know, highly oppressive up close, they built meter ridiculously. You know, think MKX Melina, think MKX Katana, think Mortal Kombat 9 Cabal. Those characters never had a problem building meter. But characters like MKX Goro, for instance, that boy didn't build meter fast at all. How could he? You know what I'm saying? He's not spamming the screen with projectiles. He's not pressuring people to death unless he's in Dragon Fangs. So how is he building meter? Getting hit? So the little meter that he did build was very important to him. And woe be unto you if you had to use meter for a combo and then didn't have any later to do the combo that would have killed and won the match for you. And so that meter system produced a lot of inequities because of the kind of gameplay style that the characters had. So what's my solution to this? I propose doing both. Combining the best of both worlds to try to make a, you know, new meter system. So here's my proposal. For one, I would still keep the offensive and defensive bars separate, but instead of it having 2 segments for each one, I would turn it into 1 segment. So you would have 1 bar for offense, 1 bar for defense. I would also, I would let it build back on its own. However, it would build back super slow. I'm talking about slower, far slower even than the meter that's built when you do a breakaway in this game. Like, that meter builds back pretty slow, but not nearly slow enough for me. I would make it maybe 50% slower than that. You know, so the meter builds back passively on its own. Okay. However, unlike in MK11, I would bring back the property of players being able to build meter faster. So, performing special moves, getting people to block said special moves, getting people to block combos and strings and stuff like that. All those things would help build meter faster, the same way that we used to in Mortal Kombat 9 and MKX. So I think that's a good compromise. Not only would this work for offensive bar, it would be the same thing for defensive bar. You have 1 defensive bar, comes back passively, but certain actions can build it back even faster. Actions such as perhaps ducking throws and ducking high attacks, performing counters, you know, successfully blocking attacks could potentially bring it back, you know what I'm saying? All those kind of things could bring your, you know, could help you build your defensive meter up, or whatever NRS decides. You know, it doesn't have to be those particular things. I'm just throwing out ideas. Point is, you can make your defensive bar rise up by performing actions in the game. So, as far as wake-ups, I would say our wake-up system from MK11 was actually pretty good. Sometimes. The main thing that made it trash was the fact that you could roll either forwards or backwards and potentially get a full combo for someone trying to pressure you on meaty, I would remove the roll. I would remove both rolls, bring back the tech rolling that was present in MK9 and MKX, and every character has universal wake-ups, but it's only up 3 and up 2. And both of those would cost your entire defensive bar. So if your opponent already used defensive bar for something else, they ass ain't waking up with no attack. They have to block. You know what I'm saying? So now meaties are actually a thing again. You know. But if your opponent does have defensive bar, you got to watch out. You got to decide, should I attack or not? Because if I try to attack and I hit them, they might interrupt me and then be really plus. You know? I would also add a delay onto jumping on knockdown, because jumping was too damn powerful on wake up in this game. And so I would add maybe a 3-frame delay or something like that on jumping out of a wake up. That way, if people use a mid on you as you're getting up, that mid's probably going to pluck you out of the sky. You know what I'm saying? But the point is to give, you know, the defender defensive options that are powerful when they work, but also give the offensive player offensive options that also work under the right circumstances. Obviously, I would definitely go back to the breaker system. I think that's objectively better than breakaway. Of course, characters would break back to neutral, and they would not be able to attack right after, you know. But I would make breakaway cost defensive and offensive bar, so both of your bars are drained when you perform a breaker. And they build back slow as hell. You know what I'm saying? Also, I would bring back the first hit bonus. So to begin with, you know, characters would not start off with meter, and whoever got the first hit bonus gets a full bar. So that first hit in a match is like mad important now, because it gives you a head start. You know. Now, as far as the run mechanic, look here. I don't like running in a Mortal Kombat game. We saw how much running affects the meta in a game like MKX, and it does not, you know, fit my personal taste to have people being able to run up on you from full screen at like breakneck speed, and all it costs is stamina. Like, I don't like that at all. But a lot of people really love the run feature. You know what I'm saying? And if people really enjoy being able to run in a Mortal Kombat game, I think they should be able to run. But running should come with a huge caveat. Performing a run automatically consumes your defensive meter. Automatically. And honestly, a lot of moves would consume your defensive meter, particularly those that completely disrupt neutral, such as Jackie's leap. You know, so presuming that Jackie Briggs is a character in this future Mortal Kombat, if she does that leap move and decides to supersede neutral, it should just consume defensive bar straight up. That way she can use it to get in, or use it to extend a combo, you know, with her cancels and things. But she wouldn't be able to just loop that shit, you know, forever and keep people on a block loop and have 50,000 options on offense. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, before Jackie Main's cry about anything, I would still give her creative freedom to, you know, do all kinds of crazy offense, but it would be limited to her stances, and it would be something that is manageable for the defender to, you know, counteract. You know,
Page 6.
we don't need her to be putting people in a damn leaping cancel loop, you know what I'm saying? So running would cost defensive bar. It would just drain it. As soon as you perform a run, you drain your defense bar, meaning your ass can't break, meaning your ass can't wake up. You'd have to think before deciding to run across screen. And then I would even slow down the run speed. I think the run speed of certain characters in this game, like Jade and Terminator, I think it was perfect, honestly. I mean, they still ran fast, but running was so inconsequential to the meta of this game that you forget that it exists. And that's the vision for what I want run to be. Because I don't want characters to just be able to bypass neutral for free. I want the mid-screen game to really matter like it does in this game. And, you know, almost kind of like how it did in MK9. It mattered how you got to your opponent. It mattered whether you jumped or whether you walked. Whiff punishing was a thing. You know what I'm saying? And I think no matter what they do, or NRS decides to do in Mortal Kombat, those things should always be important. And they should never be de-emphasized just so that, you know, scrubby players can easily be able to do combos on people. No. And I would make the anti-air strong as hell, man. We need MK9 anti-airs. Jabbing normals. All that shit. You know? Especially if certain characters are going to have up to 4 different jump-in attacks because of their 2 stances. You know what I'm saying? Like, we need anti-airs to be strong. Not overpowered, but just strong and consistent. You know? But, yeah, I mean, those are my ideas about the future of Mortal Kombat. I just really want the game to be fun for everybody. I want it to have a long shelf life because people are still discovering combos 3 years, 5 years, 10 years after the game was released. I want characters to have legacy, and I want that legacy to be utilized in new and creative ways that not only optimize the gameplay experience for the person using the character, but also provide a challenge for opponents to get around that's not insurmountable. Will people still complain that strong characters are strong? Of course they will. Will they mistakenly proclaim that certain characters that are actually not overpowered are broken and need to be nerfed? Of course they will. They ain't gonna never prevent that. But at least you'll have a game that will hopefully be able to bring together all segments of the Mortal Kombat community, which is all I'm really trying to do with this. You dig what I'm saying? But with that being said, y'all, I'm gone. Peace.